In the early 20th century, an insurance clerk named Franz Kafka began drafting a story on loose notebook pages. After his death in 1924, a friend assembled those fragmented pages into a novel. That manuscript became a landmark of existential literature. Take a look at this scan of a handwritten manuscript page from Kafka's drafts. The very first sentence of the story presents a notorious problem for translators. The original German text uses a specific subjunctive verb form, hätte, along with the word Bosses. Most English versions tell us the protagonist, Joseph K., was arrested without having done anything wrong. But the German phrasing is blurrier. It suggests he did nothing truly wrong, which leaves open the possibility that he wasn't purely innocent either. This grammatical haze sets the premise for the entire book. Joseph K. wakes up to find himself under arrest, yet the authorities refuse to name a specific crime. The incident happens on the morning of Joseph's 30th birthday. Two mysterious agents arrive at his apartment to announce his arrest. Oddly, they do not handcuff him or throw him into a cell. Instead, he is told to carry on with his day-to-day affairs. He goes to his job as a bank clerk and lives his normal life, shadowed by a sprawling, invisible legal authority. Today, the word Kafkaesque is often used to describe annoying bureaucracy. We use it for things like long lines at the DMV or dealing with a confusing phone tree. But Joseph K.'s situation goes beyond paperwork. He is caught in a psychological trap. The court system actively tempts him and demands his participation in a procedure with no visible rules. To understand the mechanics of this trap, we have to follow Joseph's journey into the labyrinthine world of the court itself. Joseph receives a summons for an initial inquiry, but when he arrives at the address, he doesn't find a courthouse. He finds a dilapidated tenement block, with the court operating out of a stuffy attic. Inside, he delivers a passionate speech attacking the absurdity of the proceedings. The crowd initially claps, but Joseph quickly realizes they are all wearing identical badges. They are partisans mocking him. The hearing then derails completely when a man sexually assaults a washerwoman in the corner of the room. The proceedings operate on a kind of twisted dream logic. Later, Joseph opens a small storage closet at his bank and finds the exact two agents who arrested him being brutally whipped by a man in dark clothes. The horror hits the next day. Joseph opens that same closet door, and the whipping scene repeats itself exactly as it had before. The court functions as an inert, obscene presence. It bends the rules of reality specifically to disorient and degrade the accused. Desperate for a way out, Joseph seeks help from the few people who seem to understand the system. He hires a bedridden lawyer named Hold and consults a court painter named Titorelli. Titorelli explains that the court never grants a definite acquittal. The best outcome Joseph can hope for is an endless cycle of delays and temporary pardons that keep the threat of arrest permanently alive. Joseph meets a merchant named Rudy Block. Block has spent his fortune and reduced himself to a dog-like state, sleeping in the lawyer's waiting room for 5 years. Fighting the process has simply destroyed him. Consider this diagram representing the human psyche. The heavy shape acting as a crushing weight on the isolated figure represents the superego, the internal voice of rules and judgment. This explains why Joseph voluntarily attends hearings for a court he claims is illegitimate. Joseph insists on his innocence, yet he behaves like a man trying to clear his name. He is projecting a pervasive, unconscious human guilt onto the external bureaucracy of the court. The trap functions because the accused maps their own existential anxiety onto the proceedings. K surrenders to the illusion of the court's power. The story reaches its climax in a dimly lit cathedral. Joseph wanders until a prison chaplain calls out from a massive pulpit. The priest tells Joseph a parable called Before the Law. A man from the country comes to an open door seeking the law, but a fearsome guard denies him entry. The man waits by the door for years, sacrificing everything he has to bribe the guard, but he is never allowed inside. Decades pass. As the man is dying of old age, his hearing fades. He asks the guard why no one else has ever tried to enter. The guard shouts into his ear, "This door was intended only for you, and now I am going to close it." The priest and Joseph debate the story. Joseph argues the guard deceived the man. The priest counters that the guard is a servant of the law, and his actions are simply a reflection of the system's absolute nature. The priest explains that the system doesn't require belief, only necessity. K must simply accept his fate as an unavoidable part of the structure. On the evening before his 31st birthday, 2 executioners arrive at Joseph's apartment. They march him out of the city and into an abandoned stone quarry. The men strip off his coat and pass a double-edged butcher knife back and forth over his body. They wait for Joseph to take the knife and do the job himself. He refuses, so one of the men plunges the blade deep into his heart. As he dies, Joseph watches a distant figure in a window and utters his final words. Like a dog, he leaves the world stripped of his dignity, entirely ignorant of the charges that killed him. Years later, the philosopher Albert Camus, seen here in this portrait, analyzed the novel. He viewed Joseph's journey as a struggle against an indifferent universe. Camus interpreted the narrative as a reflection of the trial of day-to-day living, a series of tests and judgments that continue until the inevitable end. Kafka's unfinished manuscript ends without a verdict or an explanation. It suggests that for some, the trial is simply the act of existing.